guys, how's everyone doing today? Well, today's murder mystery, we're going to look into a disgusting one actually. Serial killer Levi Bellfield. Now this guy is a special kind of sick. When I looked into his past, oh my god. Yeah, just look at his face, it's on his face, you can see it. This guy actually looks like a piece of shit. He looks like your typical killer, yeah. Dead in the eyes, and yeah, he's an absolute creep. So, like I did with the Peter Tobin case that I covered, I'm not going to look into Bellfield's past right now. I want to start with his victims, and then I want to work back to when the police figured out who killed these girls. It took a while, by the way. And then we're going to jump around. But you'll understand where I'm going. So let's start with the murder of 13-year-old Millie Dowler. So on the 21st of March 2002, Amanda Dowler went missing. She was known to her family friends as Millie. Millie was a student at Heathside School in a place in England called Weybridge. So on the 21st of March, Millie finished school at 3 p.m. and decided that she wanted to go for a bite to eat with her friend. So she got on the train at Weybridge and then got off a few minutes later at the next stop at Walton-on-Thames. Now this wasn't the usual stop that she would get off at. She got off a stop early because, as I said, she wanted to spend time with her friend that day. She wanted to get something to eat and have a little girly catch up. So she got off the train station with her friend, and at 4:45, she phoned her dad and said that she would be home within half an hour. Not to worry, she was with her friend, just catching up and having a bite to eat. So when Millie had finished her food, she started walking home. She was last seen around 4:08 p.m. on Station Avenue. She'd actually walked by one of her friends who was waiting at a bus stop. After 4:08 p.m, however, she just vanished. She just vanished into thin air. The police pulled up CCTV camera and they should have seen her walking up this road, but there was nothing, absolutely nothing. When Millie hadn't arrived home, her parents phoned the police around 7 p.m. and reported Millie missing. So police decided to put a large search out to try and find Millie. They searched woods, they searched homes, they searched gardens. Over 100 police officers decided to, went on in this search. They searched everywhere and they just couldn't seem to find her.
We're devastated. We're just so desperately worried, and we just want to have Millie back home with us so much.
Unfortunately, 6 months later, they'd finally get an answer as to what happened. And heartbreakingly enough, Millie was found by mushroom pickers in a field. She was naked. And due to decomposition, they couldn't tell how she had died, but they knew that this was a homicide. They knew that 13-year-old Millie had been murdered. Millie was found 40 minutes away from where she had last been seen. So someone had taken her and dumped her body in this field. Now, shockingly enough, some absolute evil nutjobs wanted to take credit for what happened to Millie. Unbelievable. They were calling her family, pretending to be Millie. They were calling her family and saying that they were the ones who had killed her. One was an actual paedophile who was actually in prison for assault on a 12-year-old girl. He'd contacted the Dowler family and said it was him. Even a British newspaper called News of the World had hacked Millie's cell phone, her mobile phone, and read her messages. Absolutely unbelievable that people are so sick to do this kind of thing. and torment her family in that way. Now, none of these people had actually killed Millie, and it would take 20 years for them to find out who actually did. Now, the day before Millie was taken, a 12-year-old girl had survived an attempted kidnapping not far from where Millie had been taken. So the police suspected there was a serial attacker out there. They didn't know just how evil and dangerous this guy truly was, but they were about to find out. So just 5 months after Millie's body had been found, on the 5th of February 2003, 19-year-old Marsha McDonald was coming home from a night out with friends. She had gotten on the bus, and I should have said this at the beginning, that all of these attacks are centred around bus stops, train stations. This creep was stalking them. So Marsha had been out with friends that night. She'd went to the cinema to go and see a flick, and when she got off the bus, she'd started walking home. As she was walking home, I think it was around midnight, someone came up behind her and hit her hard on the head with a hammer. Now, some neighbouring houses actually heard a scream, and they came outside to see what was going on, but by this time the attacker had already fled. Marsha had been hit several times on the head with a hammer and was rushed to hospital, but unfortunately she passed away the next day from her injuries. 15 months later, the attacker would strike again, and this time he attacked 18-year-old Kate Sheedy. So on the 28th of May 2004, Kate Sheedy had been out with friends, and again she was getting the bus home. Now, Kate was attacked instantly after she got off the bus, but this attack was a little different. This time he didn't use a hammer. This time he used his own car. So as Kate was crossing the road, she did notice a car with the engine on, but it didn't have its headlights on. She kind of felt a little bit sketched out, but she decided she was just going to walk away and start walking home. As she was walking over the road, the car drove into her, knocking her flying into the road, then decided to reverse back over Kate and left her for dead on the road. And here's Kate's 999 call.
And where does it hurt?
Everywhere. The car stopped and took me out.
Yeah.
Started me again.
He ran over you again?
Yeah.
So he ran over you twice?
Yeah. And I really hurt.
Now, Kate sustained serious injuries, but thankfully she was going to be okay. She'd survived this, and she was able to tell the police exactly what she saw and give a description of the car. And from Kate's statement, the police were able to go back and look at CCTV camera, and they found that the car had actually been following the bus. So he'd obviously seen Kate getting on the bus when she'd left her friends, and had followed that bus, waiting for her to get off and then attack. His next victim would be in 2004, and it was 22-year-old Emily Delgrange. Emily was from France, and she had been living in London for 2 years as she was a student over here doing her studies. She worked at a cafe for extra money and lived in a place called Twickenham Green. On the 19th of August 2004, she had been out with her friends and got the bus home. As she was getting the bus home, she actually missed her stop and had to get off at the next bus stop down. So she had a little bit longer to walk home. So to cut out some time, she decided to walk through Twickenham Green Park. Now, halfway across the park, someone came up behind her and hit her hard on the head with a hammer. She was found not long after and was rushed to hospital, but unfortunately a few hours later she would also die from her injuries. So the police suspected that all these attacks were linked due to each of the victims all getting off buses, and they had 2 cars in 2 of the incidents that they had seen following the bus, but they didn't know who this was. So they put out an appeal to the public that if anybody can give them any tips, any names, any information, just to help them with this case, because they knew there was a serial killer out there. And they got a few names back, and one of the names is actually Levi Bellfield. Now, some of the tips that had came forward, one was actually from a girl called Anna Marie Rennie. When she was 17 in 2001, she had got into an argument with her boyfriend and had stepped out for some fresh air. When she was out, Levi had approached her and asked her if she wanted to go for a ride in his car. She said no. He didn't want to take no for an answer, so he got out the car, started grabbing her, put his hand over her mouth and tried to drag her into the car. Luckily, she fought back and managed to get away from him. And 4 years later, she was able to identify him to the police. Another one of the tips that came forward was from an ex-girlfriend of Levi's, who said that she suspected him of being involved in the murder of one of the girls. So knowing this, the police decided to put Levi under investigation. And as they were following him, they actually caught him trying to lure 2 schoolgirls into his car. And with that, they arrested this piece of shit.
We've reached a line where all this similar stuff's coming up, isn't it? Blondes, buses, Levi's cars. Yeah? Why did you do it? What chance did she have?
No comment.
No chance at all. Size of that gun over her. Not once, twice. Leaving her for dead.
No comment.
18 years old.
No comment.
Yeah? Like that. Because something's gone in Levi's head. That's what's happened,
No
mate.
comment.
It is. Too many similarities, Levi. Too many similarities for the question not to be asked and for you not to say why.
No comment.
No comment. Because you can't say anything, can you?
So who is Levi Bellfield? He even looks like a sack of shit, doesn't he? Well, let's get into this. So Levi was born Levi Rabbits in 1968 in a place called Isleworth, which means he stuck around the area that he attacked these girls in. So yeah, he attacked right on his front doorstep. Levi was known as a real mummy's boy, and he even, this is so gross, he even slept in the same bed as his mum right into his teenage years, which is so messed up and weird. Oh, okay. But it just gets weirder. Levi had 4 other siblings, and him and his family grew up in a council estate, which in the UK is government housing. He was brought up by his mum because his dad had passed away from leukemia when he was just a young boy. Now, Levi was a messed up sick kid. At 14/15, one of his sisters had even said that Levi, oh, this is so disgusting, that Levi had sexual intercourse with her rabbit, and then as he climaxed, he snapped the rabbit's neck. It's just messed up. Now, another weird incident happened when Levi was around 12. He became obsessed with a girl who was a couple of years older than him, named Patsy Morris, and he'd asked her out and she rejected him. She didn't want anything to do with him. And Suspiciously, 2 days later, Patsy was found dead, and until this day, her murder's not been solved. But could this have been Levi's first victim? So when Levi was grown, had his own house, his neighbours would say he wasn't the kind of guy you wanted to mess with. He was known as a bit of a thief, and he would take things from the neighbours' huts, lawnmowers, anything that wasn't nailed down. If Levi wanted it, he would take it. And if the neighbours said anything or went to the police, Levi would destroy their gardens or try and smash their windows, threaten them. Yeah, he wasn't a nice guy at all. And unsurprisingly, Levi was also very abusive to any of his partners. He would beat the utter shit out of them. He would make them sleep on the floor. He would even make them taste his food, because he was so convinced and paranoid that they were trying to poison him. Now, Levi had been quite small as he grew up, and decided when he was older he wanted to do weightlifting and take steroids, which then created roid rage, which made him even more violent. And it's shocking to even know this, that he had 11 children with 5 different women. Levi also had a fascination with schoolgirls, and he would make his partners dress up in schoolgirl uniforms. He also despised women with blonde hair, and one of his partners said that she found a magazine, and every lady in the magazine who had blonde hair had their faces scratched out. Yeah, he's just so creepy. And as you can see from these victims, they all seem to have blonde hair. Coincidence? I don't know. Levi had a number of jobs. He had a wheel clamping business where he would clamp people's wheels and then intimidate them into paying hundreds of dollars so they would unclamp their wheels. He was also a bouncer, and when he was a bouncer, he would roofie girls and rape them, and he had a criminal record going back to all the way in his youth for robbery, assault, weapons offences, driving offences, forgery. The list goes on and on. This guy was just a first-class scuzzball. There's nothing, absolutely nothing attractive or redeemable about this guy. He was just a loser, an absolute loser who used his aggression and abused people in the most horrific ways. He was just... he still is, because I believe he's still alive, but yeah, he's just a piece of shit. So on the 20th of November 2004, Levi was taken off the streets once and for all and arrested. He was charged with the 2 murders of Emily and Marsha and the attempted murder of Kate. And he was also charged with another attempted murder, which I've not mentioned, and that was the attempted murder of Irma Dragosha. She was standing at a bus stop speaking to her husband on the phone when someone came up behind her and hit her on the head with a hammer. Luckily, she survived, but she doesn't remember the attack at all. But the police suspect, because it's so similar to all the other attacks, that it was Levi. Now, Levi was well known to the police. Even before the murders, they had 27 investigations open about him. They should have bloody known that he was dangerous by this. But they had investigations open against him for rape, assault, robbery. Yeah, it just goes on. Just all violent offences. And he should have been taken off the street well before he was. And of course, like every scumbag involved in these kind of crimes, he denied it. Yeah, wasn't Levi. But thankfully, he was found guilty in 2008 and he was given a full life tariff, which means he's never ever going to be released. He's deemed to be too dangerous to ever be let out of prison. They should have, I don't know, like, known what the crimes that he was being investigated for and the things that he did even before they knew that he'd murdered these women. You think if they would have put him away long before now, but at least he's away now, I guess. But that doesn't bring back the victims. Now, there was one murder that still hadn't been solved, and that was the murder of Millie Dowler. So police decided to look into Levi's whereabouts when this happened, and they noticed that he was living in the same area as what Millie went missing in 2002. They were also looking for a red car, and they figured out that Levi's girlfriend at the time owned this exact model and colour of car. So they knew that it was more than likely that Levi was the one that took and killed young 13-year-old Millie.
Proving very hard to crack the murder of 13-year-old Millie Dowler. Over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation in the media about one man who might have killed her. A name that is in the frame as far as the media is concerned is Levi Bellfield, found recently guilty of 2 murders and attempted murder. Is there a connection as far as you're concerned?
I'm certainly very interested in Levi Bellfield.
What are the connections then between this man and Millie?
We're trying to trace a red Daewoo Nexia vehicle that was seen approximately half an hour after Millie's last sighting in Station Avenue.
And you believe that this red car could be the car that was used to transport Millie's body?
It's quite possible.
So the police brought Levi in for another interview, and I'll let you hear it now. I want to apologise because there's a screeching kind of noise in the background. I don't know what it is. But yeah, here's them being questioned about Millie.
No comment.
You didn't say, it's not me.
No comment.
And at no stage over the last 2 days have you denied any involvement in these offences.
No comment.
Why is that, Levi?
No comment.
Why haven't you sat there and said, jumped up and down and shouted from the rooftops, you've got the wrong person?
No comment.
I find that very strange.
Do you honestly believe that your actions over the 21st and the 22nd of March 2002 are the actions of an innocent man?
No comment.
Then are you an innocent man?
No comment.
Because if you are, tell us.
No comment.
I believe you took her off the street that day. I believe your motivation was sexual. And I believe you took her back to Collingwood Place. And I believe you killed her there. That's the truth, isn't it?
No comment, sir.
That's what happened.
Now, Levi's girlfriend at the time would give a statement to police, and she would say that on the day Millie went missing, they had been house sitting for friends, and he had been out around 4, 5ish that day, and then he came back maybe about 5:30, and they spent the night at the friend's house, watching the house, sorry. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, Levi had woke up and said he couldn't sleep, and he went back to their house, which was only a couple of miles away. And the next day when she got back to the house, she was surprised to see Levi changing the sheets on the bed, because Levi never did housework. He never changed the bed. He'd never done anything like this. And he would tell her that the dog had messed on the bed. But she thought this was very suspicious and thought there was something not quite right there. So in 2010, Levi was charged with the murder of Millie, and he got a whole life sentence again for this. And then in 2016, he finally admitted that he was the one who took Millie and killed her. What a fucking monster. Absolute monster. To do that to like a 13-year-old child. Absolute monster. The police suspect that Levi's been involved in tons of more attacks and murders. He actually confessed to the murder of Lynn Russell and her daughter Megan. Her daughter Josie had also been attacked. The three of them had been attacked with a hammer, and Josie was the only one to survive. He later retracted that statement. As of now, there's actually another guy serving time for this murder, but his lawyer has said that he's got a 4-page confession from Levi, so the police are still investigating that at the moment, and we're just waiting to see really what happens. But my thoughts really go out to the victims of this bloody animal, the young women who died, and the ones who were also attacked and who this is going to affect for the rest of their lives. Levi Bellfield deserves to be locked up and never letting out again. The keys thrown away. He deserves that. And there's a special place in hell waiting for that bastard. So I'm going to leave this video here now, guys, and I'll be back later with another. Bye, guys.